Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July Transformation Talks podcast. I'm Lacy Frazer, co-founder of Whole Soul School and Foundation, and I am here today with David Morgenstern, and I will ask David to introduce himself in a few minutes, but first I'd like to introduce our podcast theme for this month. The theme for Whole Soul School and Foundation this month is we're talking about the concept of being 100% responsible for creating your reality. And I opened this month with a blog on the topic, and we are going to talk all month long about the concept of being 100% responsible for our reality. And my friend David has agreed to join me today to talk a little bit about his take on this principle and how it's been effective in his life. But first, I'd like to just ask David to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about yourself, David.
Well, yes, I'm David Morgenstern, and I met Lacy I guess about 9 years ago now, as time's gone by, and I met when I was in federal prison, and through a series of travels, I ended up in Buckner, North Carolina, even though I'm from South Florida here. And the nature of my crime was a money laundering scheme down here with illegal gambling proceeds. And I think that the shift in the 100% responsibility thing is what's framed my life right now. So I'm really glad to be called upon here by Whole Soul to speak to this. Lacy and I started in June of 2010, after we met in her class, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. I was by the time I left in 2015, I've been to the class about 6 times. It was a charming time, and we met a lot. We became close in these issues. I think we became friends as best you can in that environment. But I think we really became tight on these various shifts that happen as we understand the quantum movement between the essential energy and how that manifests itself in the many, many different ways of our own lives, and how harnessing it though, understanding the theory of it is one thing, but living it out, I think everyone, from my experience in the class, picked a certain point of that, and they are now living that. In my particular case, the 100% responsibility thing is what resonated with me and really created a massive change in my life.
Well, and I'm so excited for you to share about how that works in your life. I think you have an amazing angle on it, an amazing viewpoint on it. I think I want to take just a moment to sort of review for our listeners that when I say 100% responsibility for our reality, I'm really talking about something that's based in ideas around quantum physics, that my belief that everything is energy, that energy runs through everything, that we are energetic beings, and that energy that's running through us all the time is also magnetic. And so it's drawing to us that which is like itself. And so, in my blog article, I really talk about this thought and this feeling that if this is true, and if we start to pay attention and see evidence of this in our life, right, our belief in it becomes more deeply grounded, and we start to live our life differently. We start to understand that our words have power because they have energy. We start to realize that our feelings are actually energy in motion, are energetic, and have a magnetic quality to them. And so all of these ideas and concepts and principles are very, very important in helping us create a reality, because we're pulling things into our experience, and we are pushing things out of our experience that are all a vibrational match to that energy that is within us that we are putting out into the universe. And what's so powerful about that, David, in my mind, is the power that we actually have to create a different experience, to create many different experiences, to create a different reality. there is, infinite potential and infinite possibility out there. And it's within our power to manage our energetic vibration and what we're putting out into the universe. And so I used to say all the time, and I know this will sound familiar to you, that you have to ask yourself these questions. Who are you hanging out with, and what's their energetic vibration like, and what are you talking about when you're with that person? Is there a lot of gossip? Is there a lot of complaining? Is there a lot of judgment? Or are you hanging out with people who are enjoying life and who are committed to a positive attitude? What kind of foods are you eating? What kind of drinks are you drinking? What are you putting into your body? That all contributes to your energetic vibration. So, these are the questions we have to ask ourselves, because if we are here as, human being, spiritual beings having a human experience, whose energy is flowing through us and interacting with universal energies all the time, and we have some power over the quality of that energy we're putting out and the strength of that energy that we're putting out, positive or negative, then what are we doing to really manage that and to create something that something new, and to create the things we desire? What are we doing in our life to optimize our experience here on earth, and to be in joy, and to be in love, and to trust that we're always co-creating with the universe? So I know I've talked about this a number of times through my Whole Soul School Foundation podcast, and certainly through the program in the prison. But I think it's a foundational concept that I wish I could just implore everybody to understand, because there's so many people out there who are suffering in their life. And I think they suffer because they believe that it's their external circumstances that are creating their suffering. If people could move into this place of accepting responsibility for their vibration, ultimately they'll be accepting responsibility for their life and creating something new. So I wanted to sort of introduce this topic as from that angle, from the quantum physics angle, with respect to we're accepting 100% responsibility for our reality. And I'd love you to comment a little bit on that. And then I know you have another way to sort of describe how this principle has been really important to you in your life. So I'd love to kind of turn it over to you and hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that laying out the process, which is what you've done. In other words, just going back to the class momentarily, the power of the shift was to understand what was really going on underneath the moment to moment circumstances, or things that we do. In other words, we do what we do, but what is underneath what it is that we do, and what is guiding that, and the principles, the processes of quantum physics enabled us, in my case, to understand that I was very influential. And I think that the biggest setback for people is that they don't realize that they are influencing everything around them.
Yes.
And so when I got out, I wanted to change my legacy, of course, but I also wanted to have people realize their greatness within them, because that greatness is this power to influence. And if you understand the process of the quantum level of what's going on inside of you and around you, what happens is you can step into that and take responsibility for what it is that you have to contribute. That greatness that is within us has power. But yes, the thing is, if you don't understand the bandwidth of how it works, you cannot turn it from a process into practicality. How does it really work? In other words, in the day-to-day things that we do, how do you empower someone? Or I know that the old trick that we used to do in there was, like, we'd focus on somebody and say, look at me, I'm empowering you to look at me, out on the track or whatever. And the thing is, when these things turn your head, that is to say, when they actually happen, and you say, wait a second, this just happened. I just had empowerment And now in that influence, I have this new sense of being able to make a contribution. And that's where, for me, this construct of 100% responsibility uh, built in uh, to a way that I live life out of a practical, day-to-day, taking 100% responsibility for my life. It's what I call living life on life's terms, which was a settling for me. My life was a crazy 100% creation, but it was a modulated. In other words, the calibration of the things that I did was irresponsible. I had the thing all the way turned up, all the magnetic attraction and all the things that were happening were coming at me so fast, and I was operating at such a speed that not only were mistakes made, but the sense of empowerment was wrong.
Yes.
When you're out of service to others and you're just making money and you're just dominating others, it appears to be that you are doing what it is that these processes or powers should have you be doing. But the thing is, what you've left out is the responsibility, responding to the needs of others and the way in which, your sense of being woke, I guess that's the big political correct word now, being woke, now you have a sense of being able to ingather and welcome and help train those to understand really basically themselves, that they are goodness, that there are things that they can fit, and there's influence that they can undertake.
So what I really love about what you're saying is, and tell me if I'm on the right track, is this concept that, when you start to wake up to the realization that you have this power within you to sort of create and maneuver in the universe in this way. We've always had this power. We all have this power, but what we've not been awake to its true meaning and its true foundation and the mechanics of it. But when we wake to it, well, let me go back. And in fact, for many people, they are in a place of, before they awake to its true nature and how to use it responsibly, they use it in a way that's irresponsible, unbeknownst to them, in the sense that it becomes about power and control in a selfish way, in a controlling way, in a dominating way, to use your word. But when you wake up to the magnificence of knowing that we are these energetic beings walking among and within this energetic universe, and that we have the power with our thoughts to influence, we want to do so in a way to contribute to others' lives. We want to do so in a way of service, in a way of giving back. And that's kind of what I love. And I know for you in particular, your shift and your transformation as a human being, a lot of it has been about learning about power and control. And you lived kind of in the dark side of power and control for a long time. And you've really come into a place of balancing that and using your wisdom and your knowledge and your both intellectual and emotional capacities now in a way that serves others and is in a way that's healthy and has a very different focus than it did before.
Well, the way that I put it is that basically the definition of responsibility shifted for me, and as you know, was the different voice of Carol Gilligan, etc., and the so-called feminine ethics. Although I didn't know all that at the time, it was later that I discovered what her commitment was. It was unique to me because who knew? But what I did like about her definition of responsibility was that it was not obligated to do something. I think most people's interpretation of responsibility is I'm obligated to do something. I'm responsible. I have a duty to do this, or I have a requirement, or somebody told me to do this. And I think in my own life, that oppression caused me to rebel in a certain way, which was to be power and controlling. In other words, if you're going to put me in charge, then I'm going to definitely be in charge, and watch this. Or if I had some power and I was obligated to use it, then I would use it however it had to be used. I have a brother, a twin brother, and I'll never forget this one time in our particular life story where we were struggling a little bit in this particular business, and and he says, David, we've got to do something even if it's wrong. And I think that many people have a sense that they have to do something.
Yes.
That they're obligated to do something instead of the other definition of responsibility is to respond to. Something's happened and you respond to it. You know, in what the ethics of care that Carol Gilligan speaks about is this response to is one of caring. That subliminally, deep down in the human soul is the sense that I care. In cultivating and reenacting and recalibrating the sense of humanity that we care for each other. You know, and the common usage of this is that if you see a person stumble, the tendency is to help them. You know, it's not something that you think about. It's just something that you end up doing. You know, in her approach, and then what became my approach through the class as we began to speak about the quantum journey is, okay, how does one shift this into responding to it? How do you make it practical? How can I make these things show up in my own life? You know, in my crossroads of this was 100% responsibility, because I knew, because of my life, it has a lot of story to it, a lot of critical things, a lot of hardship, a lot of tragedy, a lot of which I caused, which is irreparable, very difficult to carry as a burden. What I needed, though, was a place to basically rid myself of that struggle within me, the struggle of regret. You know, and I think that those of us that have been to prison, we have a tremendous advantage, because it's really obvious that we are being punished. And it's very obvious that we need to arise out of that circumstance into a place of restoration. You know, I think that many times people out here in the real world don't get the chance to see their imprisonment and the fact that they're punishing themselves through this process of victimhood.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
As you know, I go down to the jails now here in South Florida, and you know, one of the things that I try to speak to and listen for is this victim thing. You know, and this course of blame, this travel through life of blaming others for just about everything. You know, and my question to them is, well, you know, is there a sense that you want to be forgiven for where you are? You happen to be in a prison or jail, whatever. And so it's pretty evident that however it turned out, you're in a situation here where you're locked down. You know, you don't have the fuzzy feeling that somebody else did something, although there are innocent people in prison. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, the heart of the matter is that the prisoner wants to be forgiven. You know, deep down, it's like, how is this, will this payment that I'm making to society redeem me from myself? Will this actually make a difference? And I think that your coursework enabled us to take a look at that instead of the typical prisoner way as, oh, the guards and this place, and I'll get through it. I'll be the same when I get out. And, you know, I tell the guys down there, what a tragedy that you would go through this experience and end up exactly like you were or are. You know, and for me, that 100% responsibility was, I can now respond to my own pain. I could respond to the fact that I let my heart fade into a place of non-entity. And I didn't have a heart. All I had was a capacity to use gifts to make money, push and shove, and end up being the person that could say, "Oh, I won. That's what I did." With that sadness that says, "Well, what did I really get out of it?"
Yeah.
And this sense of being responsive to myself. I said to the guys down there, and I said to this myself, when I was there with you, was, okay, how is a victim forgiven? How do you do that? And what I discovered in that process was that a victim can't be forgiven because you're a victim. It's everybody else's fault. So what are you going to be forgiving? So like,
Right.
okay, I know that these things happen in my childhood and this, that, and the other, but if I could respond to it, and be responsible for that, responding to it, I could clean it out of myself. I could find forgiveness for myself.
So I think it's important to highlight the shift that you're talking about, which is this notion that at the deepest core level, there's this quantum physics element of taking responsibility because of how words and feelings and actions and our energetic vibration interacts with the universe. That's kind of the root. But in our human form, we're also talking about really owning
Mhm.
responsibility for our lives and for the choices we've made. And that was certainly very relevant when working with you and working with the men in prison is because so many people, like you say, come into prison in this very, very victim mentality, which is, it's not my fault, I didn't do it, it was the prosecutor, it was the judge, it was the government, it was everybody else. And
Mom, dad,
yeah,
son.
it was my mother, it was my father, it was the abuse, it was the this, it was the that. And not to negate or minimize any of the things that may happen in our lives, because that's what living is about, is having experiences, and many of them may be negative. But there comes a point, and I think this is what you're talking about, where there can be a profound shift in one's life when they turn to own their
Mhm.
responsibility for their role in their lives.
Right. And the thing is, to connect with the quantum physics empowerment of this, the first step was to understand that we are powerful beings and we
Yes.
are influencing everything around us. When we have negative emotions, we tend to have negative people show up, or we tend to make other people negative. The realization that we are the reality that we're putting out there is the reality that we're living in. The people around us
Yes.
tend to be attracted into that. And so I think that the starting place was when you get into the prison environment and you're genuinely humiliated in your own life. Yours about as low as you can go. You're afflicted. You're in the shadow of death. You've got irons on. You can't get that door open. That's for sure. So
Right.
your sense of control
Yeah.
evaporates.
Right.
So where does the control come from? Where does one find that place where they can now restart? Where can the power of one's internal self be found? And the thing is, in there, you can only go within. In other words, there's no
Right.
rescue plan.
Right.
Nobody's coming for you.
Right.
It isn't like you're going to get, some sentence reduction. I mean, some people do, but that's not the general trend. And I think for me, it was the thing that I needed. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs this, but I needed to be the person I am today. I needed to be the person that I never was. In other words, it's like I say to the guys down there, when you were 5 or 6 years old, I'll bet your mother never said, "I can't wait till my little boy goes to prison." So there's a time in our life where we shifted from this capacity to do good and serve others, and we became what it is that we became. And then all through that catalog of time, what you realize is that you don't realize that you're still powerful. And then the quantum physics element enabled me to understand that I had great influence around me because of me, not in spite of me.
Yes. Yes.
And the things that happened to me were contributing to the capacity for me to serve and do decent things for others, because I had non-decent things and I did things. So the opposite of that was to serve. The opposite of not caring was to care. The opposite to give, not give, was to give, etc. And what the transformation, the practical part of it for me was that by responding to all the things that I had done and canceling them out through forgiveness, I was able to rebuild a brand new self, based upon what I now knew, which was like, my influence is absolute. It has never changed. I used it the wrong way. Okay, I made mistakes. I got the chance to pay for the mistakes. Another great gift to the prisoner is we have evidence that we're paying for what it is that we did. I know I tell the guys that I go down to the jails and see, it's a real gift that you're here, because some people they're still trying to pay for what it is that they can't figure out how to pay for.
Mm.
They can't figure out how to forgive themselves because they don't put themselves in the environment of forgiveness. So, there are positive things that happened, to me in the prison experience. And one of the biggest things was I am living life on life's terms. I use that expression because life happens, all around us. It's like, are you going to respond to it and engage it? Or are you going to feel obligated? And because you can't do anything because you feel disempowered, now you're going to be a victim about it. Just the other day, one of our dogs ran off on the 4th of July, and, our dogs are, if you have pets, it's an amazing thing. I never had any pets until after I got out. Pets, come on now. I love my dogs now. Mickey's my dog. And the thing is, the crushing reality that the dog was gone. It's chipped, but didn't have his collar on at the time. And yet there was this positive ascension in our hearts that, like, we'll find him. It's got to happen, because all these things that lined up was not Hobbs gone. It was Hobbs present. He ran off, and just a neighbor, Vicky was driving the car around and real slow, and the guy pulls up and says, "Are you looking for a dog?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm looking for a dog." In that responding to the event, not feeling obligated that the dog is okay. We know no dogs come home, we're obligated to mourn. We lost our dog. No, you respond to it. You go to it. You go after it. You engage it. You empower the circumstances around you to be attracting and welcoming and optimistic and hopeful. Even on the site, the lost dog site, it says, "Don't give up."
Mm.
It's things that you do, things that you don't. And one of them is be optimistic. And then one of the don'ts is don't give up.
Wow.
Dogs are notably mostly out. So anyway, just a little practical story.
Yeah.
In a day-to-day life that says, okay, let's respond to this.
Yes. Yes.
We're 100% responsible for Hobbs being gone. Let's respond to it.
And not sit back and be a victim of it.
Yeah, that's right. We lost our dog. I guess he's gone. No, go out there. You have power. You have influence. The universe is listening to you. God is listening to you. You go there.
Yes.
Go there to that place of responsibility. And these things can show up as resolved. You are part of the solution. You don't have to be, as they say, part of the problem.
David, I think it's pretty incredible that you are having the opportunity to go back into the prison environment and to help serve and to help people currently incarcerated, and talk about giving back, talk about responding, talk about influencing. It just warms my heart to no end to know that you are doing that and that you are helping those people in the way that I know you can.
Yeah.
And I know you have probably many stories about, some profound experiences, but I'd love it if you would share at least one story with us today
Okay.
about this concept of responsibility and forgiveness.
Well, let's go to an extreme. In other words, instead of talking about
You extreme?
well, they're really intense, passionate. There's this one guy. And let me just say that my story that I tell is about this 100% responsibility. In other words, my approach to prisoners is that look at, there's a need out there for men, and there's a need out there for men in their communities, and that it's time to man up, to show up and show out. And I said, the way that men show up is that you have to take responsibility for what you've done, and you have to do it in a way that repairs what's going on around you so that people can reconcile with you. I'm not saying I'm not talking about restoration. I'm talking about just conversation. Being in conversation with the people that are the previous victims or family. And then there's this long period of time that I call reassurance, where you're doing the right things and you are serving and you are cleaning up and you're doing the things that you should do, both socially and practically and personally, to the people around you. And then eventually, someday there'll be restoration. Like even in my circumstances now, I've been out about 3 years and remarried to my wife and my 5 kids and all this stuff. But the thing is, I consider myself to be in that reassurance period. I'm doing what it is that I believe men should do, which is be protectors and providers. Not that women shouldn't, but you understand that we only minister to men. I'm not talking about women, men thing. It's just, in my experience, we're not permitted to minister,
Right.
coach women. Well, there's this one guy, and I always talk to this area of forgiveness, because the 100% responsibility thing almost always rises and falls on, hey, don't you want to be forgiven for all this that's going on, and the things that happen to you. And I know things are extreme that happen to us, especially when we're younger. And those extreme things, though, if you stay a victim, how can that be forgiven? And this one pretty young inmate, he says, well, I'm never going to forgive my father. I hate him. I hate my mother. It's like, well, what's going on? He said, look, I was born in prison. You're talking about being in prison. I was born in prison. I was separated from my mother, and then I didn't see her for another 4 years because she had to do her term. And my dad was in prison. It was his fault that my mom was in prison because of drug dealing or whatever. And you think I'm going to forgive my parents for what they've done? I'm in this prison right now because of my parents. Look at you. I hear all this fuzzy stuff that you're saying, but it doesn't apply to me because of my circumstances. And I said, well, I said, you really, and I said to him, I said, you do have an extreme circumstance. And I feel for you tremendously. But I said, how long ago did this happen? He says, well, I'm 25 now. So it's 25 years ago.
Right.
And I haven't talked to my dad in 15, 20 years. Don't ever want to see him. And I said, and so he continues to speak about his life. And his life's all about 25 years ago. And here he is now in prison for burglary or something. And he's repeating the place of his victimhood. See, he can tell this story inside a prison and people
Over and over.
listen to him. And the fact he's incarcerated and his life is over and he lost his girlfriend. And, why did all that happen? It's because of my parents. It's because of where I came from, how many kids get born in prison type thing. And I said, well, let's just try to go over a couple of things here. The one thing is when I say take 100% responsibility, what I'm talking about is responding to your circumstances. In other words, can you respond to what it is that's happened to you other than living out of it right now? And I said, first of all, is there any way that you can forgive yourself? Let's just start with the easy stuff. In other words, you're a victim. Can you forgive yourself for just being troubled right now? Can you forgive yourself that you can't forgive? How about that? And he says, well, what's that supposed to mean? I said, well, let's just try this out. What if you forgave your father? I mean, what difference does it make? This is about you and your energy, yourself. Whether he knows that he's forgiven by you or not, what does that do? Does it make him a better or lesser person, or does it affect you? Can you respond to the fact that you blame your entire circumstances on someone else? And I said, how can you take control of your life?
Right.
How can you have any responsibility for what's happening to you? And he goes, this stuff doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I said, well, let's just start with something easy. Can you forgive the fact that you burglarized his house? Let's just start with right now. And just to make a long story short, and we processed this over a couple of weeks, and then I didn't get to see him for a couple of weeks because we went to another part of the jail. And this past week, I saw him, and then he was like, before he had this rugged beard and greasy hair and stuff. And the thing is, he's all washed up, he's all shaven. I said, what's going on? He says, I really started to see what you meant by responding to my own life. In other words, I don't need to be in a position of blame and sorrow with this thing anymore, because I'm responding to it as something that happened a long time ago. It's not happening right now. And I said, well, you're right. What's happening right now is you have a burglary charge, and you need to get with your public defender, and you need to start unpacking this circumstance, because you can respond to you being 100% responsible for this charge. In other words, this is now. And these things, he says, he said, it didn't make any sense to me when you first said it, because the thing is, this victim thing enabled me to take my antidepressant drugs, enabled me to use drugs, and now I got caught trying to steal for drugs. And I've been in this drug thing since I was 16, 17 years old, always coming up with the reason for being in the drug culture because of my sorrowful beginning.
Right.
He said, now, he said the best thing happened, I saw him this past week. And he said, this thing's really working. And I said, how's it working? He said, well, my public defender, I told him, I said, look, I don't want to keep this drug thing going in my life. And they said, I was wondering whether you were ever going to say that. Because his whole thing was, I got to have my antidepressant medicines a pill line. I'm just a druggie. I'm just going to get out of here and do drugs. But instead of speaking that reality, he said, well, look, I'm trying to clean myself up. And so now his public defender has him doing a lesser sentence and going into a drug program. Now, his whole life has changed because he's taken 100% responsibility for it.
Yes. Yes. What an incredible story. What an incredible story.
Yeah.
I mean, and what I was going to say was what's so evident in this story and parallels so many of the stories that I saw when working with men in prison is really shifting from beating the old drum of the victim story over and over again, and moving from beating that drum to really owning responsibility for where you are in your life right now, and for creating out of the present moment your future moments.
Yeah.
Right. Because
the victim thing puts you to the extent that we have any control at all. The control that we have is that we influence and we can influence the life of others by serving them. That's about as much control as we can claim on the good side of getting something done in my life. You know, in other words, I had all the riches and the powerful houses and homes in 4 countries and all the crazy stuff. But the big thing is like, I would rather go in those jails, you know, and serve these guys and tell them, look you know, I spent 13 years in prison. I got out when I was 67. I'm 70 now. And here's the thing, you're 25. I was 25 once. I was in prison. You know, when I turned 40 in prison, 60 in prison. I was in prison before. I said, here's the thing, you can stop. You can actually choose. You could be like me and have this story about an older man that got out and everything worked out. Or you could be like you are now at 25, and you can be a young man that gets out and everything turns out. I mean, it's going to be your choice, because the system, and this is what I tell them, because I was in the system, you know, for a while. I said, the system, you're low-hanging fruit because you have a record. So, and here's the thing, because you're doing this victim thing, you're going to do drugs again. You're going to do this burglary thing again. So you're going to be in prison again. And so someday you're going to be talking to people like me, or not, because you won't be around, and you're going to have all this age on you. And you're going to say, well, why didn't I listen to that guy that came in and talked to me, that said he wished he would have had somebody when he was 25 that came into a prison and said, why don't you stop? Why don't you take responsibility for your life? Instead of me, a long time ago, living my little victim thing, you know, I was drunk, my brother, you know, all these things. And then as I built out a life of basically power and control and pushing and shoving, and then what I realized is that that life was just a response to not being responsible. You know, it was just I had the money, I had the power, and I used it in a way. And that the problem with that whole structure is it's elevated, it's inflated by others that are piling on that same kind of we're in charge and they're not. And so it helps me, and I really love to do this work, to go in there and say, you should not want to be like me.
Hmm. Well, you know, you're sharing your wisdom. You actually want to say you want to be like me now.
Yeah, well, you know, I've had guys say, one unfortunate situation, a guy say, well, you got to do everything crazy all your life, and then look at you now. I said, that's crazy. You know, look at me, and I've been free for 3 years, my brother. You know, I've been out of prison 3 years, and I'm almost 71 years old. So yeah, I might have this grand X number of how many years or minutes or whatever, none of us ever know. But I do think that if somebody takes responsibility early, they're going to have a better life than the life that I'm going to crush into the however long I have to do this. And I intend to do it with passion and enthusiasm and verve and energy as long as I can. But you know, I always tell the guys that you can do it starting where you are right now. Just imagine if you made the decision to never do what you're doing now, because half of what it is that you're doing is that it's out of the blame and victimhood of I just have to do drugs because why shouldn't I? You know, I mean, I can go through all that story because I was involved in that story for about 22 years. And so my work there, because I just now this week started seeing single guys. It used to be groups. Now I get to go in and meet one-on-one guys. And all the guys I to talk with are maximum secure. These are serious players. So, you know, the power of what it is that I learned there with you, and the empowerment that I have now through practical using of these characteristics, these traits, because I don't want to use them as tools. They are what I've become. And in the traits that I have and being able to share with these guys, what it does is it empowers me to feel great about myself. There's a lot of things in my life that aren't working right now, but there's one thing that when I go down there and I come back and my wife says, how'd it go? And I say, it's fantastic. There may be a lot of things that aren't working because a guy my age, finding work, this, that, the other, Medicare, there may be a lot of things, but I'll tell you one thing that does work, and I want to encourage the listeners. What really works is serving
Yes.
others with what it is that your experiences are and the things that have happened to you. And in whatever that is, as you say, that coach approach, it's like, look, I'm not trying to convince you of anything.
Right.
That's one of the most powerful phrases that I say. Oh, you're just, and it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm sharing with you my direct experience. Now you can listen to that experience, or you can experience what it is that I experienced, because here's what doesn't change. Negations, trouble, taking, not sharing, bullying, whatever you want to call it, has the same result. What doesn't have the same result is that place of pure creation, where we can invent what is ahead of us on the positive side in a way that it's only limited by our imagining. Or you can live in that guttural basement of motivation, survival, victimhood, blame, anger, bitterness. You can live down in that catalog of survival, which is kind of animalistic, really. Or you can live in that visionary place where, in the heavenlies, as I call it, where these great things can happen because you're there. See, that's the difference. You're there. And there's great things happen because of you. And if you're down here, what's going to happen if you're in the basement of to use the metaphor of motivation?
Well, and I think to tie kind of several things together here, one of the reasons when you're in that creationary space, when you're in that visionary space, when you are in that place of imagining, when you are in the place of understanding limitless possibility, your energetic vibration is high. It's fast. You are tuned in, tapped in, turned on. You're connected. You're connected to yourself. You're connected to other people. You're connected to God or spirit or source or the universe, whatever you want to call it. You're connected. And through that connection, through that high vibration, things are created. What you are imagining comes into form based on that energy.
Well, that when I was there with you, that I ran recreation, the whole recreational department. And when things at the other prison, when they needed more guards, they actually took all the rec guards from recreation. I was unsupervised for almost 5 years in the department of running an entire one of the 5 parcels inside the prison is recreation. And the reason I share that is that, and I use this with the guys, I say, inside I had no control, I had no power, I had no authority, I had no resources. All I had was the heart to serve, a desire to create and be present with other people, to create a place in which we could all have a good time, irrespective of the fact it was a prison. And my the reason I share that is that sometimes you think you have to have all these things all put together. You have to have money, you have to have power, you have to have control. I had none of that, and yet over the course of that time, I had total control of an entire part of, only because they needed guards elsewhere. And it's like, well, this thing is looking pretty good. The guy's got integrity. Let's see what happens. And people say, well, gosh, you must have been so powerful. You know, how could you do that? You have this criminal record and everything. How could they do? I said, here, let me tell you the real truth of the matter. The truth is nobody else wanted to do it. In other words, I wasn't the best guy. I don't know. I'm not a basketball player. I mean, I lift weights, but I'm not a sports guy, but I did all the basketball tournaments. I'm not a track guy, and I did the Biggest Loser and all this stuff. But the reason I share that is that sometimes you have to look around and see the fact that nobody else wants to do what it is that you want to do. And that's the thing that you should do.
Mm.
Don't keep fighting somebody else because I want to do what he does. Do what nobody else wants to do. And then in that empowerment, everything's going to show up for you in terms of what it is that your influence and your empowerment and your greatness, as I call it, that can finally show up. And I laugh about it. It's like, because people say, well, you must have been, and you had to be. It's like, actually, nobody wanted to do it. And so I said, well, I'll do it. Here I am, send me. Let me do this because it gives me a place to practice. And this to be true because, we would leave the class and it's like, well, have at it, And the thing is, practicing it is what made it practical. It's what made it real and able to be marched out over a lifetime, whatever's left, etc. And being marching that out over a lifetime by practically applying what it is that these, quantum, is it real? Does it work? Well, just get out there and start. Start responding to the circumstances that are out there and take that place of your greatness, whatever your destiny is on this journey, just go there and just show up, so show out, get busy. Anyway,
yes,
that's what I do.
Yes, and it's what I do, and I
yes, you do.
you and I very much align.
Wonder where I learned all
this. Say that again.
I said, wonder where I learned all this. Well, you say, well, I do.
Yeah. Well, we align in this energy stream of passion for service and passion for teaching and passion of tapping into greatness and maximizing potential. And that's really what I do as a coach and what I do as a teacher. And I know this is what you do as
Our
well.
foundational joke, is that I have a blue shirt on and you have a pink shirt on. It's like, okay, where do we get this? I didn't know that we're going to do that. But I think that the connection that you built with us in what I think is fascinating is that not everybody in the class has this 100% responsibility, but not everybody's out there on the skinny branches living it. They're living another parcel of that quantum physics context that we spoke of in there. Every one of us has a particle in that journey that says that totality of the quantum physics of this thing in the practical, in the natural, this is my part of it. I'm going to live this out. I don't know that you have to know every one of the singular mechanisms because on your particular greatness, you're going to find that place in that. All those things are going to add in, and then you're going to be able to live out that singularity or whatever you want to call it of contribution. And that's why, the whole soul context of reading down the quality of how it gets to magnetism is that all of us will end up with the strongest particle of that is our greatness. And by doing that, that's why you see these lovely, really beautiful distinctions and people working together and collaborating in a very, very powerful way that's very different than having that A word, which we were told to never get ourselves involved in, called the agenda. In other words, living out of that freshness and the openness of what shows up, that something will happen. That this is the power of understanding what's beneath it in terms of the physics of it,
Right.
and then living out what happens to you because, well, you're you.
Right.
It ends up being what it is that you, what you are, your greatness, as I call
Yeah.
it, realizing your greatness.
Well, we are running out of time, but I just,
Yeah,
you and I could do this for hours on end.
we have.
Yeah, not could. We have. And I just want to thank you so much
You're welcome.
for being here today and for sharing your wisdom, and most of all for being such a wonderful example of somebody who is stepping into his greatness, who is owning responsibility for himself on all levels, the wonderful, the amazing, and also the shadow and the hard challenges and things like
Mhm.
that. I mean, we have to step in and own it all. And once we own it all, the sense of freedom that comes with that is just remarkable. And
Yeah,
I saw it over and over again working with men in prison. It's happened to me in my own life. And I just I'm so grateful that you were willing to share your story and where you are today with us. And I know our listeners will get a lot out of this today. And I know we're going to do this again, David. So
good.
thank you so much. And I will just say to our Whole Soul School and Foundation listeners, you can find us at www.wholesouls.school-and-foundation.com. You can hear us on our YouTube channel at Whole Soul School and Foundation on YouTube. Please consider donation to help us keep the lights on and help us provide a lot of this wonderful free content, these interviews with wonderful people around the world. And I look forward to my next Transformation Talks interview in the month of August. So, David, thank you again.
You're welcome.
And, lots of love, and look
Yes.
forward to continuing the conversation.
Okay.